Hello and welcome to this Applied Ergonomics lecture 14. We were talking about the different strategies which can be used for structuring of organizations, and so in line of that we saw some of the basic themes like specialization based structuring or departmentalization based on grouping tasks of similar types under one domain, or even depending on the span of supervision one could possibly structure certain organizations, and in principle all these are followed from time to time even in a single organization when we talk about decision making regarding the structuring of systems related to such organizations. So, let us look at some aspects particularly in the area of span of supervision, just because there is a issue of control of many subordinates by one authority or one supervisor. There has to be a certain unity of command line which has to be followed. It should not appear as if one person is reporting to multiple stakeholders or multiple supervisors and taking instructions which are conflicting in nature between the different supervisors, so that there may be some kind of issue about the tasking process. So, in designing certain organization structures, one has to keep a view of the fact that if supposing we want to have a line diagram for an organization, there should be by and large a possibility of very less crisscross as far as reporting is concerned of a certain employee of a certain subject to a certain supervisor. Okay. And so, in general one should avoid multiple supervision activities unless the tasks involved are very interdisciplinary in nature, where there are multiple organizations stakeholders which are involved in taking decisions. So, we need sort of the unity of command principle in order to structure organizations. So, therefore, one person is in charge of each administrative unit. Typically that is what the strategy is, what is followed, and that is at each level of the pyramid, including one person at the very top of the organization. The person at the top has overall authority and responsibility for the whole organization, and every employee reports to only one person. Example, for you can report to either a foreman, or a foreman can report to a manager, and manager can finally report to a vice president, etc. So, there should be a sort of a vertical line drawn between the different subordinates reporting and reporting authorities. So, the principle that I again generally described before, and it is followed in globally, is that no worker should report to more than one boss, otherwise there may be issues related to the responsibility and authority of such members. So, let us look at the definitions of all these two terms, responsibility and authority. So, responsibility means that a member of an organization is obligated to perform an assigned task, an assigned function to the best of his her ability. So, this is something which is designated. For example, you have to define quantum of work in a work system, and you have to define different tasks or jobs in a work system, and as I think mentioned in my previous lectures, it has to be down to the level of even a very small task of picking and placing a material, okay, from one place to another. Okay. So, you have to divide the whole systems into such tasks and jobs. Now, the question is whom you are making responsible for what set of jobs and tasks also need to be very well defined. For example, if I want to have a foreman in place at a certain area looking after a bunch of workers in that particular area, then one should give him a domain of responsibility which he should carry forward and for which he should be responsible. Okay, so that if there is any non-compliance to that responsibility for which a task does not get accomplished or done, then one can hold him accountable for such a lapse on his part. So, therefore, responsibility basically has to be coined in terms of a good task structure given to an individual. The member has of course a responsibility to the organization. He is accountable to his or her supervisor. So, that is definitely where the information comes top down. So, if supposing there is a non-compliance which is being felt, one has to listen to the person that is authorized to give instructions to the concerned person. He has to believe, okay, and so basically these are some associated you can say co-responsibilities given to an individual, that one who listens to a top down information about non-compliance or about something related to whatever intended task was meant to be executed, has to listen, has to act to the concerned supervisor authority to whom the concerned person is reporting. Okay. So, in line with that, we would like to bring out this term authority, which means that an organizational member has been given an official power to delegate these responsibilities, to utilize certain organizational resources, okay, and this direct these resources with the delegation of the responsibilities to the different people that come under his span of supervision, so that they can discharge the responsibilities well, okay, which have been delegated. Now, this person typically would have a right to take the action, make the decisions, give directions, and in turn is responsible to his higher up within the organization for getting a domain of work finished in time. So, now this structuring of the task has been made in a manner so that the top down order can get distributed into many responsibility centers, and therefore, the span of attention of an individual can get more better implemented because of such distribution. If supposing if I alone, for example, sitting at a manager's position were responsible for the whole domain or whole quantum of work, of course I am responsible, but I have a subordinate whom I can entitle to be responsible in a certain area or division of that task. So, this definitely makes the span of attention more close control. It also definitely makes the monitoring of non-compliances much more close control, and depending on how you have laid out its structure, really the efficacy or efficiency of an organization would come out. So, therefore, it is about dividing the responsibility and authority in a judicious manner, which would prevent or which would let an organization structure be very different in terms of its performance. So, when we talk about delegation of responsibility and authority, the individual at the top obviously is ultimately responsible for the overall success or failure of an organization, and therefore, if some problem arises because of which there is limb and life loss or some safety concern is there, or let us say for example, something related to the quarterly performance of an organization comes forth, sometimes the people who are at the top at the helm of affairs at the administration level are the first to take the casualty. Okay. So, therefore, the individual at the top has to have the necessary qualifications to distribute tasks in an appropriate manner within his organizational structure, where he is quote unquote responsible for any failure which would happen to the system. So, this is typically why delegation is needed, as I told you, is the person himself cannot do everything, and some responsibilities and authorities need to be given or delegated to the next level, and further those executives where this has been deliberated has to be delegating it to some other responsibilities and authorities, and this way a pyramid is built up where the basic task is structured into many subtasks, and in a very well defined manner you have knowledge of who does what in order to complete the whole overall picture in terms of success of the organization. So, typically such pyramidal structures are very commonplace, starting top down from the head of the organization to the smallest let us say level of task accomplishment which happens for the running of an organization. So, let us now talk about decisions. It is very important that when we are talking about organizational tasks and organizational structuring, at what level decisions have to arise and what are the kind of decisions, are there any guidelines which should be followed regarding the decision making process has to be properly addressed. So, the basic central question what is important here is that what level should decisions be made in an organization, and generally the guidelines which are there say that decisions should be made at levels as low as possible in the organization, okay, because again the philosophy is in some of the organizations is unless I am able to see the actual thing at the actual place, by going to the actual place, I should not be able to take the right decision to solve a matter. Okay. So, therefore, if it is down the level that you are delegating the decision making responsibility, then you do not have to every time intervene okay, unless there is something where you need to make a systemic improvement and reorient the decision making process to a certain direction. So, this is called worker empowerment, okay, when made at the lowest level in the organization. And if we can do this, we need as less supervisors as possible. Believe one thing that needs to be believed at this kind of a top down structure is the lesser the number of supervision authorities, the more would be the productive work coming out, because sometimes because of the human nature and associated system of the structure, there may be conflicting interests between the span of supervisions of 2 or more authorities, okay, at some middle level of an organization, and because of such conflicts there may be non-performance overall happening, which need to be removed. So, if the decision making is done at the fundamental level, at the root level, then such problems may not come out, because now you are empowering almost everybody which is in the work chain from top down all the way to the so from down the minimum level all the way to the top, so that you can have the span of supervision only limited to certain extent, to certain tasks or certain responsibilities, not over the whole lot of responsibilities. So, typically if one can avoid supervision or supervisors to make routine decisions, that is typically the best example of a working or a running organization. Otherwise, there will be time delays, there will be conflicting interests, there will be all sort of non-compliances which happen because of such decision making challenges on different levels. So, what are the kind of decisions that people would typically take? So, there are routine decisions, decisions for which rules have been formulated to guide the decision maker. So, you just go by what is written somewhere and documented somewhere to arrive at a decision. For example, if I wanted to be a quality supervisor and if I would look at, let us say, a production line, I would exactly know what are the parameters that I have to monitor for a certain week, for a certain month, for a certain day, and how many times I have to monitor that, and what is the measurement yardstick that is being used to monitor that, and then how to record that data. So, I would exactly be rule driven on that in terms of the knowledge that is recorded, documented somewhere for my action to be. So, the decision making that I have to do is to just follow that guideline which is there in order to implement the task or responsibility that is there in my hand. So, these are routine decisions, okay, and as long as the situation fits the rules, then the decision is more or less automatic. You need not worry even at the supervisory level why a person is doing something in a certain manner. As long as there is no non-compliance which is involved from the rules, there is no supervision which really is necessary. If supposing, however, there is a deviation from the set rules or the set guidelines, then there is a need to look at, and there is some involvement of the supervisory authority. So, therefore, and then there can be non-routine decisions. These are routine decisions earlier, whatever I mentioned. Non-routine decisions could arise at situations where we talk about some kind of a policy change. For today, for example, in a lean manufacturing system, I am operating at about 20% more inventory, and I feel that there are a lot of bottlenecks which are there because of the late arrival of the system of the trucks which are delivering the material. And so, therefore, a policy decision needs to be taken that can I raise this from 20 to 25% extra inventory. So, this is a decision which has to be arrived at with multiple stakeholders, not a single stakeholder. For example, there has to be the involvement of the supply chain department, there has to be involvement of the QA or the quality assurance department which actually records the part and does inspection before sending it. There has to be recording of the materials department, there also have to be a say of the ultimate source where the material is routed into. It could be a weld department or a press department or even a paint department or an assembly department. So, all these people need to get together for making such a policy decision. So, these kind of decisions are typically known as non-routine decisions, and we normally use the non-routine decisions in case of any exceptions, any deviations which are not being thought of. Example. So, let us look at the non-routine decisions in terms of policy making decisions versus operating decisions. So, typically policy making decisions can be made at the next level above, or basically again at certain different levels, but not definitely at the level where the decision has to be taken. levels higher than those levels. Okay. And policy making decisions could be related to something where multiple stakeholding is involved. Now, operating decisions or routine decisions are generally which are taken at that particular level. For example, today I have some material shortage on the assembly line. I will not definitely go to my supervisor above to see where the material is, but my responsibility is to look into where such material is within the other different material sections and trying to arrange something so that there is no line stoppage. So, that is my direct decision making for which no supervision or no supervisory control is needed. So, only thing is there is a system in place. Let us say for example, if I wanted to go to the material store or if I wanted to go to another line to get the materials, you have to do the respective, you have to follow the respective route or system, including punching at that particular line from where the material has been taken, to addition in terms of computer punching in the line stock where the material is being transported to. Now, as soon as you take that decision, all the underlying work which is there in order to implement that decision also becomes your responsibility. So, that is how you take this non-routine decision making, okay, probably which is above and over and above the normal routine kind of decision making process. Okay. Then there are certain exceptions which would happen while decisions are needed, maybe circumstances or situations which did not arise before, okay, and did not and cannot be covered by the normal decision making rules. For example, let us say today there is a factory strike which is there because of certain demands of the operators which are involved in a certain work system, and immediately the goal that happens is how to solve the problem by looking into the root cause, okay, and there has to be multiple levels involved, you can't just do it. So, this is an exception principle that something which has happened all of a sudden which probably was not there in the system or which did not happen in the system, because of which a decision needs to be arrived at. So, typically the decision maker might want to bump the decision up to some higher level. So, who can actually help in order to ease things, or in fact at certain times he needs to have a collated thought or opinion among the several different members at the same level before even going or approaching the higher level, where some solution is proposed to the higher level for the final approval. So, those kind of decisions are what happens once in a while, and they can be decisions needed because of this exemption principle in terms of circumstances that an organization may face. So, when we look at different organizational structures, so far we have discussed principles of how you can categorize different workforce into sections, departments based on span of supervision, etc. But the different structures that formulate as a result of all such principles are in traditional organization, where there are line based organizations and line and staff organizations. I am going to now individually do these two in a little detail later on. And then there are these new organizational formats which talks about matrix organization or virtual organizations, also involving certain tasks or projects which are one of its kind, where there may be more than one domain of supervision needed or one involvement. So, for example, let us say if we talk about a certain defect to be eliminated in an automotive, which relates to the different parts of the way that automotive is being made. For example, it starts at the press shop, comes to the weld shop, there is some addition there which need, and everything is being reflected in terms of finally the defect which is coming. For example, we can look at a case of let us say shower leakage. Okay. So, all these automotives which are produced on line, they do have a tendency of leaking in rainwater while standing outside exposed to the environment. Okay. And shower leakage defect is considered to be a very sort of a red corner defect, because it generally creates a bad impression about the company. If a new automotive going out in a raining condition or even a condition of let us say flooded roads where there are splashes, etc., starts leaking because of that. Now, the leakage issue is a very compounded issue, where stakeholding has to be from the sheet metal body itself to even the weather strips or other small components which are like related to how they would be giving enough pressure between the openable parts, so that there are foolproofed sealing of the automotive on all sides, and there has to be again involvement of multiple stakeholders. So, in such kind of projects which are highly specialized in nature, typically there is a task force module which is created, which works in a matrix format by reporting maybe similar levels which are working together across a variety of different departments coming together to find out this solution for this quality problem. Okay, so these kind of organizations are called matrix organizations. Of course, the same thing happens now on a virtual level. Given the digital era which has come up, there are many organizations which actually work more on a virtual mode, and these are the two new kind of organization structures which have evolved. So, let us look at the traditional organization structures first, the first one being the line organization. So, a line organization is typically a single pyramidal structure with direct chain of command from top to bottom of the organization. So, therefore, there can be probably a president, several vice presidents, several managers reporting to the vice presidents, and so there is a certain command line which is being established from the top level all the way to the bottom level, and each person below the top level reports to one and only one boss. Therefore, the person who is at the far end of the pyramid, let us say the bottom of the pyramid, will only be reporting to his foreman and not be accountable to, obviously he is accountable to the organization for running the show, but he will not be accountable to anybody or answerable to anybody above his foreman, because his foreman is answerable to his next level and so on and so forth. So, this is a sort of a traditional approach in which information flow happens from top down, from bottom up in such cases. So, but then there are certain problems associated with this line based organization, and particularly modern organizations face all those problems because of some auxiliary services sometimes which are needed, which may not be able to get qualified as a real line organization. For example, without staff support, any of the so called higher ups in the organization may not be able to run the show and there needs some staff support at every level. So, therefore, just reporting of several people to one person may not really be the only thing needed, but some other support staff in each level is also needed. So, therefore, certain staff functions have to be performed in modernized organizations, which has to be accounted for in the line based organization, and without staff support these auxiliary functions are not done or may be done poorly, and it may reflect upon the overall success of the work system which has been designed. And therefore, it is important that at every level we staff and report some or make some structures which directly report to a single boss whose job is completely defined to that boss, apart from the main reporting which is done from the value addition or from the value chain which goes into the product ultimately. So, these are line organization structures you can look at. There is a president, there are various vice presidents. For example, one could be marketing, one could be finance, one could be the HR. These are the different organizational aspects associated with any organization. There can be managers reporting to each vice president, and there can be foremen reporting to the manager, and finally workers to the foreman. So, as you go along, there is a top down approach and there is a lined manner. So, this worker really will not ever meet even president. Of course, in modern organizations the view is that the interaction has to be not only top down but also laterally, because that way it will make people generally aware about the good things which go on parallel. Of course, there is a shortcoming that even the bad elements or bad task structure which is let us say prominent at different levels may also come up, but then information flow in a way is useful, and therefore, this has to be a vertical as well as a lateral kind of a information flow. While the vertical information flow is more on a reporting mode, the lateral information flow could be more on a peer flow, I mean a flow between the flow of information between the peers, etc. So, this is how a line organization structure would be. Typically generated way back in 18th century, proposed first time by Frederick W. Taylor. This was implemented also at Midwell Steel Company in the year 1888, and this was one of the first instances when such a line organization was formulated, although there was separated planning from doing mode which was carried out. So, there was a staff function which was typically in the clerical domain or planning domain, and a staff function which was there more in the doing or production or active manufacturing domain, and all the workers would have to report to both the planning domain as well as the manufacturing domain, which was really not considered to be a very good way, but then again this is the first time that one has evidence that there was a line organization structure being followed or set up by some corporation. So there were 4 planning and clerical foremen and 4 production and performance foremen, and each worker would report typically to 4 plus 4, 8 bosses. Now these kind of organization structures are seldom used today. They can in fact not be used today, and it can be argued that you can suffice this through the line and staff organizational structure which has been proposed later. So typically this is how the plot looks like. So you have a planning and clerical domain of work, and then you have a production and performance domain of work, and there are foremen typically in all these different domains. For example, there could be a gang boss, a speed boss, an inspector or repair boss, who are all in the production domain, and similarly there could be a work order boss or a boss who is going to give instruction cards, or a time maintaining monitoring time clerk, or again a shop disciplinarian who would look into the administrative activities, and typically each worker would have to report to all. So although it's very inefficient form of organizational structure, but this is a sort of the first evidence of a line structure. So this can be modified now into what you call a line and staff organization, which sometimes do prevail nowadays in bigger organizations. So basically there is a line organization in principle as far as the reporting activity goes, and as far as the authority and the supervision span of control, supervisory plan of control goes. And the only difference that line and staff organization would have is that staff positions are added at every level to provide specialized knowledge. For example, let us look at this particular line and staff organizational pyramid. So a president has individual staff who may be responsible for giving him feedback. These are also known as advisors to the president. One of them could be an expert on finance, one of them could be an expert on marketing, one of them could be an expert on some other domain, and so they would give advisement to the president, and then the similar staffing is done at every level. For example, even the vice president level would have some staffing, the manager level even would have a staffing. So you may have a manager controlling 2 shifts where he might put deputy managers beneath him, each of them responsible or making responsible for one particular domain of time where the shift runs. Okay, and then there could be multiple foremen or multiple workers, various based on however you structured the organizations reporting to the manager. And so this is how typically the line and staff organizational requirements are carried out. So line components of the structure maintain the chain of command. Okay, as you can see, managers, supervisors focusing on managing the show, and then the staff positions would typically bring expertise to the technical problems and sometimes administrative functions, and also they can focus on some auxiliary functions which may not be really important for the value chain in a direct manner, but in an intangible manner they may be important to the value addition chain. And this is required to run the organization in a certain domain. So that is how line and staff organizations could be categorized. So when we talk about staff functions, there could be again a very nice description of different categories in which staff function can be performed. There could be an advisory set of staff where there is specialty functions in the areas in which managers need guidance, for example legal, public relations domain, economics domain. There can be control staff where functions that must be carried out throughout organization like accounting or human resources carried out. There are service staff again which would provide specialty services. For example, there could be staff providing maintenance or helping in arriving at purchasing decisions, or even staff which would be responsible for the construction of different facilities or buildings within the framework of the work system. And there could also be coordinating staff which would provide advice that must be carried out. Maybe let us say when we talk about PPC, production planning and control, or maybe quality control, these are the people who would actually not be associated with the value chain directly, but in an intangible manner their presence is mandated by the various stringent norms that the market would define, or various norms that even the proper working mode of an organization would define. And so these are the different categories into which staff functions could be divided. And typically a factory organization chart which is prepared based on again line and staff organizational framework is represented here. So you can see a plant manager which is controlling again a general foreman or a production control man or a quality control man, and general foreman looking into different supervisors, each of whom have different work domains which would typically produce something that a shop or a plant is producing. So the official organization chart is really what this is on the left, although the de facto authority of production control and quality control always rests with the plant manager, and so therefore there has to be information through these dotted lines, as you can say, directly transferred at times from supervisory level all the way to the plant manager through these routes, so that the plant manager can take a decision based on the quality control function, the production control function, and also the actual production business which is happening. So it can be a decision in unity that is being taken. So that's where we talk about factories and how their organizations are laid out. Now there may be problems with the line and staff kind of organizations. The first problem that would come in there is who is in charge. Okay, so officially the line officers should be the in charges who are responsible for the value chain which is happening in terms of value addition to the product, etc. But then at certain times there may be some staff functions, like let us say if I talk about production control or quality control, they are also in a way, although they are not directly reporting, because the line of command reports only to the plant manager, but then they may be intervening in the process of production because of the requirements which are being set by or defined by the customer or the market, or even so basically there is certain degree of control which is given to these auxiliary staff functions. So some staff function may have enough authority to override the line officers, even though the line officers are the one who are responsible for the value chain more than any others, but then you can call this policing or a necessary evil which is needed for let us say proper quality to be maintained or proper timely delivery of products to be maintained, which are very encompassing reasons for the plant manager to take an executive decision about looking at various non-compliances in different areas, etc. So another problem which happens in line and staff function is that there are too many bosses. For example, department supervisors must take instructions from multiple staff personnel. A person in engineering department comes and says that a particular flange section of let us say a component in weld which is coming from a vendor has to be repaired before it is used on line. So this is an instruction that he has to take, because ultimately this is otherwise not going to augment the whole quality. And then there can be yet somebody who says that today we need to manufacture a particular model, so many numbers in a line which was earlier scheduled to manufacture something else. So he has to quickly arrange all the materials around it, and in fact all the others in the value chain, including the material as well as vendor, has to be initiated in order to run it. But then the decision comes again top down, because there is a sudden requirement of a certain model in the market which has come up. Okay, so these are some issues where line and staff organizations miserably fail, because they have to report to multiple bosses in a way, and sometimes even they are reporting in a proper manner, work is happening in a proper manner, there are conflicting interests which would come in. For example, different staff functions may give instructions to directly to the value chain or people associated with the value chain, where there may be conflicting interest of each other on the staff function. There may be a problem that the PPC or the production planning and control wants a certain model to make, although the quality assurance team says that this model has a particular component or maybe a multiple set of components which are still flagged because there is some quality problem which has been looked at. So there can be a problem in terms of this conflicting demand from two different sections, which may lead to the complete stoppage of the production, etc. So these are some of the associated problems with line and staff organization. We would actually look at the matrix and virtual organizations in a later on module. In the interest of time today, I am going to close this module again. Thank you very much.